Good afternoon. This is our Gamifying Your Way into Engaged Learning webinar. We are doing a small series of webinars this summer, and we will be doing some more in September. So check those out when they come. I am now going to share my screen. Give me a moment. Okay. Welcome to Gamify Your Way into Engaged Learning Play. I will be sending this presentation to you at the end of the webinar. You can find all the references to any data present in this webinar at the end of presentation, and I will be sending this presentation to everyone that has signed up to the webinar sometime in the next. I will be recording this webinar, and I will share the link to it once it is available. So, shall we start? So, gamification. Gamification can be defined as taking advantage and using game-based mechanics, aesthetics, and game thinking to engage people, to motivate action, to promote learning, and to solve problems. In gamification, we use game thinking approaches and elements in a context different from games. The idea behind it is that by using game dynamics, we improve motivation and learning in formal and informal contexts. If we look into games, we begin to notice that they have distinct features. These features play a key role in gamification, such as the fact that users are all participants in the learning process, and this includes both students and teachers. The games themselves are challenges or tasks that users perform and that allow them to progress towards defined objectives. There may be points that can be accumulated as a result of executing tasks. There might be levels which users pass depending on number of points or completion of a specific task or challenges. You can also have badges which serve as different types of rewards for completing actions on or even finishing a game. We can also have things like ranking of users according to their achievements, namely by a leaderboard. So, there may be differences in some of the concepts that we might talk about when we're talking about gamification. So, things to take note, you can have gamification, you can have game-inspired design, serious games, simulations, and the games themselves. The boundaries between them are not clearly defined, and we can play with these boundaries to design learning experiences that are meaningful and that suit our students best. Game-inspired designs can be the use of ideas and ways of thinking that are inherent in games, but they don't necessarily express in adding game elements, but rather in using a playful design, like this design. And by the way, I did not create this design. This is just a template that I got from Canva, and online applications like Canva and others like Geniali all have some interesting game elements in their presentation and then some of their presentations. Gamification is the use of game metaphors, game elements and ideas in a context different from that of games necessarily, in order to increase motivation and commitment. and to use influence on user behavior. An example of a gamification app could be, for example, Duolingo, which is a very interesting app if you are learning a new language. Serious games, on the other hand, are examples of games designed for a specific purpose related to training, not just for the fun of gaming themselves. They possess all game elements, they look like games, but their objective is to achieve something that is predetermined. For example, Microsoft, some time ago, I can't remember exactly the name of the software, the game that they had, but when a new version of this Microsoft Suite came, it had a game like this that instructed on how to use the Microsoft Suite properly. They possess all game elements. They look like games, but their objective is to achieve something that is predetermined. Simulations are similar to serious games, but they simulate real-world things, and their purpose is user training in an environment resembling real life. You can find these in things like flight simulators, medical simulators, or even engineering simulators as part of specific training, and are usually used in higher education settings, but could possibly be used in secondary as well. Games include everything mentioned above. They are designed specifically for entertainment. But even then, there are some especially soft skills that students can benefit greatly from games. All of these concepts have one thing in common. They use elements that are inherent in gaming, and their purpose is to support learning and to improve users' engagement. So, why should we use game mechanics? The use of game mechanics improves the ability to learn new skills by 40%. But how does this come to be? Game approaches lead to higher level of commitment and motivation of students to activities and processes in which they are involved. It's all about engagement. Game mechanics are similar and familiar to students as most of them have played or continue to play different games. Due to the lack of engagement and motivation of students who participate actively in the learning process, teachers try to use new techniques and approaches to provoke students' activity and motivate them to participate in the learning process. One possible solution is to reward the efforts and achievements, which leads to an increased motivation for participation and activity. That decision is based on the use of game elements in the learning process. Digital tools, however, create favorable conditions, but they're not the only ways of implementing gamification. However, we can use them to process the students' data and track their process, especially if you want some more automated generation of detailed reports. With AI, we can now process data much more easily. However, as of this moment, this is still slightly limited. But keep watching this space in the next few months, since there might be significant developments in this area. Implementation of game elements in education is logical, since users' actions in games are aimed at achieving a specific goal in the presence of obstacles. In education, there is a learning objective which has to be achieved by performing specific learning activities or interaction with in an educational context. Tracking the player's progress in games is an important element because next steps and moves are based on their results. In education, tracking the student's progress is essential to achieve the learning objectives. Students' learning path is determined by achieved levels of knowledge and skills. Collaboration in education is a milestone for the effective implementation of active learning. The focus in learning processes should be focused towards developing skills for collaboration and teamwork, and a responsibility for the performance of the group instead of competition between students. This is key, and sometimes this is the way where we can see gamification really shine when it comes to student engagement. Gamification is not directly associated with knowledge and skills. Gamification affects students' behavior, commitment, and motivation, which can lead to improvement of knowledge and skills. This can lead to students deepening not only their knowledge, but the development of their soft skills. And as we all know, soft skills are essential for all areas of life, personal, social, and professional. And as educators, one of our main tasks is really preparing our students not only for now but for the future. And soft skills are an inherently and more important side of education. But how can we do this? There's a lot of things we need to take into content into question when we think about how we implement this. The development of effective strategies for the implementation of gamification implies depth of analysis of existing conditions and available digital tools, or some other mediums like outdoor learning or another physical way of implementing gamification. Things that we need to consider are, for example, student profiles. And when I mean student profiles, I don't mean if you're in a digital tool, the little profile on uh, on, on the software, but I mean profiling the students. When teachers implement new approaches in learning process, it is essential to define uh, student characteristics or profiles in order to determine whether the new tools and techniques would be suitable. This is key and decisive, and we need to look at factors that are that predispose the students to interact with the learning content and to participate in learning events with a competitive nature. It is essential to establish and to take in mind what skills are required by the participants to achieve the objectives. Also, whether the tasks and activities require special skills from learners. If tasks are very easy or very difficult, it is possible that the motivation of learners will occur, which is exactly what we don't want, and it contradicts our intent. Students' motivation to participate in training depends on the context of learning process and what follows from their achievements. So, apart from student profiles, then it is also very important to define well our learning objectives. The learning objectives have to be specific and clearly defined, which is something that we normally do anyway. The purpose of it is to achieve the learning objectives, because otherwise all activities, including gamification activities, will seem pointless to students. The objectives determine what educational content and activities to be included in learning process and a selection of appropriate game mechanics and techniques to achieve them. So the importance, it's not so much on the game mechanics. The game mechanics are just a vehicle to help students achieve the learning objectives or work towards them. So, taking this in mind, we need to create education content and activities for gamification that are interactive, engaging, rich in multimedia elements if digital, or practical activities if done in the physical world. And outdoor learning is a very good way of implementing some gamification. The activity should be tailored to the learning objectives and allow for different aspects. So things like multiple performances, The learning activities need to be designed so the students can repeat them in case of an unsuccessful attempt. It is very important to create conditions in a game and flexibility so they have opportunities to achieve the ultimate goal. As a result of repetitions, students will then improve their skills or their content knowledge. Also, we need to look at feasibility. So, are the learning activities actually achievable? They have to be tailored and adapted to students' potential and skill levels, and this is an art on itself. We also have to consider then things like increasing difficulty level. Each subsequent task is expected to be slightly more complex, requiring more effort from students and corresponding it to newly acquired knowledge and skills. So we can also kind of consolidate those. We may consider having multiple paths, and this is a little bit more difficult, well, more time consuming to implement, but it kind of helps everything along. So that in order to develop different skills in learners, they need to be able to reach the objectives by various parts. And this also kind of complements and helps with the multiple performance part of these considerations. This allows students to build their own strategies, which are one of the key aspects of active learning. So, what else do we need to look at? Maybe we need to look at game features. The key element of gamification is the inclusion of tasks that learners have to perform. The performance of tasks leads to the accumulation of points, transition to higher levels, and winning awards. All these actions are aimed at achieving predetermined learning objectives, activities that require independent or group work by students, bringing the awards to that individual or group. Things like badges, for example. Activities require interaction with other learners are the social element of training. They make students a part of a big learning community, and their results are public and visible. And this can be very well integrated with other methodologies like outdoor learning and project-based learning. So we are now going to look at a game-inspired design board, as you can see, uh, which has examples of different tools that we can use when implementing gamification, or even game-inspired activities or series games. We might not get to see them all, but I will share this presentation, which you can check out later. So this board is really a very good example of game-inspired ideas. It's not gamification itself, but can be used as a fun little activity or element of fun in our day-to-day learning. So if I roll the dice, we got a number 5. So we go back to the board and let's find out. Ooh, number 5 I have to go back to. So let's find out what we have. What example we have in number 3. So Socrative. I'm not sure if everyone knows Socrative, but Socrative is a tool that has been around for many years. Sorry. And it allows students to have things like space races, which I'm going to now show you a video clip from. So you have students answering questions on a quiz. And in this case, they're doing in pairs, so you can have them do it individually, in big groups. As you can see in the big screen on the board, every single pair has a rocket. And the objective is that students, yes, answer fast, but also correctly, because that's the only way their rocket ship is going to go forward. So let's go back to the board. So we were in number 3. One way we could have improved this, which I didn't really have the time, was to also move the little characters. But maybe that's an improvement for next time. So we're number three. We're gonna roll the dice, see what comes through. Oh, we've already had again a five. Okay, don't worry. Let's go back to the board. So in on three, one, two, three, four, five. We're gonna see our number eight. So uh, one way we can do this, and we can implement a gamification is through outdoor learning activities. And these can be things that are close to school, so we don't necessarily need a big school trip for outdoor learning activities. In this case, I'm going to show you something uh, from a outdoor education center called Benmore, but I think I have implemented this in my school where you have some clues and the students have to go through an orienting experience. In your school, you might know these as petty papers and rally papers, and they're very interesting. So you get students a little map, and they have autonomy to go on their own in a controlled environment, but it fosters independence and problem solving, and you can make it thematic to the knowledge contents that you are working in. So let's go back. So we were in number eight. Let's roll our dice. I hope it doesn't come back as five again. Oh, okay. I've cheated a little bit, so you can see that it's not always five. Okay, so if we go back to the board, we're number eight. So one, two, three, four, five, six. So number 14. Let's see what we have on 14. Again, we have another outdoor classroom experience. In this case, adventures. So these are really based primarily in adventure game boards, which a lot of students like to play. But in this way, we are actually doing it in a physical sense. So let's see, the name of this adventure is the Piranha Pool. So in this case, what do you have? You have an adventure game where students have a set of challenges, and in this case, they focus on areas like computational thinking and reasoning, um, strategy. But again, you can do it within any thematic or any subject, really. You just need to make it applicable to the knowledge you are trying students to achieve. And it's a very good way to get also multidisciplinary uh, activities and projects because you can integrate various areas of knowledge, and it helps students to understand that they what they learn in one oops, in one subject area they can use in other subject areas, and that is a skill that sometimes they have difficulty with. So if we roll the dice again, let's see. Oh, this number five really wants us. And the six. Oops. Let's go back. Well, let's see if I can get roll again. That's what I want, isn't it? Let's see if we can roll a different number just so I can show you. See, this is what happens when things are random. Okay, so we have a four. You can see that we have different dice. Now we're going to do it for real, and whatever it comes, it's the dice roll we're going to use. Okay, it's number four then. Okay, so back to the game board. We are in number 14. And now we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we're on 18 again. So here we have again another outdoor learning activity. In this case, it's similar to the other one. It's a quest. And then here you can see that you can integrate different areas of knowledge, because this is talking about legends, Robin Hood legend, and you could very easily link it to culture, heritage, um, language. It is these outdoor adventures in gamification are really very interesting for a multidisciplinary approach because you can integrate various areas of knowledge from history and maths and language. First, your native language or learning foreign languages. And it can really be a good way to consolidate skills that apply to all subjects. Okay, so we were in. We're gonna roll the dice. Sorry, I think we're gonna finish. Yeah. So we are now at our ends. I just want you to kind of show you, go through all the other examples that I had so you can have an idea. And then we are going to our finish point. So uh, in the presentation that you can check later, you can see things like games like little learning machines and Kahoot, which a lot of teachers really like to use. Uh, Digital adventures, so a bit like the outdoor learning, but in this case in a digital setting. Slido, which is kind of like Kahoot, but uh, for more adult and secondary school audiences. Things like Duolingo that I mentioned. Class Dojo, which has been around for many years, and I think was one of the first gamification tools I used. Um, Digital escape rooms, which are very popular at the moment, and you can very easily do it on something like Google Forms. You can also use things like Roblox and Minecraft. Physical escape rooms. So in this case, for example, it's a simulation escape room. Um, Book and adventure board games. So you can actually use the very typical adventure board games um, and use it in the classroom setting. You can find many of these online for free, and you just need very cheaply to print them out and just create your own adventure for the class. And I've had a lot of success doing things like this with history teachers and language teachers. And I've done some online versions of this for my computer science courses. So we also have things like paper and pencil games, which are really good for reasoning and to acquiring all sorts of skills. Okay, Minecraft, Folded, which is really good for like science learning and things like that. So I'm going back to the board and oops, finish. Oh, maybe. So I had the wrong link there. I am sorry. I'm just gonna put it to the end. So as you can see at the end of my presentation, I have my bibliography. And if this event was interesting, or if you want to participate in the next webinars, next time I will be talking about mindfulness themed microbit projects. It's a very entry level microbit projects. It's going to be on the 5th of July at 5:30. And we are looking at all sorts of interactive activities that introduce and develop mindfulness techniques to students, especially things like helping them regulate their emotions and calming down. And I find that my students really enjoy these, especially on those days that they've already had many lessons and they're getting a little bit overexcited. If you don't mind me saying, we also have some teacher courses that normally happen in Hotel Golf Mar. The one you're seeing on the screen is called Gamification and Role Play to Enhance Learning through PBL. They are designed for teachers that have a KA1 Erasmus teacher training grant, but they can be attended by any teacher. So we do a package that has the course, accommodation, meals, and transport during the course and from and to Lisbon Airport. We stay in a lovely hotel at the seaside with lovely rooms and a good shuttle bus. In this course, for example, we're going to talk about gamification. We're going to really dive deep into gamification and role play. So look at introduction to gamification, role play, PBL, looking at adventure games and paper and pencil games and escape rooms and outdoor learning, and how we can integrate the gamification with different methodologies, looking at how we can actually assess them, not just a summative assessment, but a formative and life learning assessments, so not just assessment for learning, but of the learning and helping students progress in a steady pace. And with this, we'll look at implementation of activities and projects and rubrics that are specifically for your environment and that you can take back home with you and apply them as soon as you think it is appropriate. We'll be doing some of these activities as you've seen. I really love not just doing digital gamification, but actually include outdoor learning into gamification, and we'll be doing these in Vimeiro Adventure Club, which is an outdoor learning club attached to the hotel. Óbidos, which is a medieval town and culture center, and that we really like to use for gamification activities that have to do with history and culture and our Portuguese heritage in this case, but can be applied, I'm sure, to all sorts of cultures. And we also do some more STEAM-based, science-based gamification examples in Tapada de Mafra, which is a reserve, a nature reserve, which with the convent are classed as a UNESCO heritage site. It's a very, very, very lovely day out, and we get to do a lot of learning in these settings too. Also, we will be looking at more how we can use interactive museums within our gamification planning. And in this case, we're going to be looking at Dino Park and going and doing some activities there, namely some adventure activities. So I hope you enjoyed this webinar. We love to share ideas. So if you have anything that you have some questions about, just leave it in the comments and I will try to respond to you. So as I said, we have this course, it's 20% off, and we have our next webinar on mindfulness projects with microbits. It is on our website, as you can see, trailblazingeducation.eu, and I really, really look forward to seeing you again.